Hi, I'm Diane, and today we're going to make Southern Buttermilk Biscuits. And that's this recipe if you want to screenshot it. So to start out with, what I do is I like to use White Lily self-rising flour. I think it gives a really good result. The whole cultured buttermilk, I use Mayfield, and 1 stick of butter. So I've already measured the flour. And I'm going to start out by cutting this stick of butter really fine. So I just go down and make a lot of small cubes. I just use the store brand of butter, it doesn't matter. But I am particular about the flour and the buttermilk. I'm going to cut one direction and then the next. This just makes it a little bit easier. You do use the butter straight out of the refrigerator. That's important. And some people even freeze theirs, but I don't find that to be necessary. So see how small I'm cutting the cubes? Just like that. The smaller you cut them, the less you have to cut it in. The tools you want to use are a pastry cutter, a pastry blender. I like to use the dough scraper and a biscuit cutter. And I preheated the oven to 500. Yes, you heard that right, 500. You want your biscuits to bake quickly at a high temperature. So we're just going to cut this in. So really small, like small grains of rice. So this will take a couple of minutes. The smaller you get it, the more incorporated the butter will be into your biscuit dough. Now you don't want to over cut it in because then it will start getting like a dough. But I don't know if you can see that really well. See how those pieces of butter are really small now. Just a little fine little crumbs. I did wash my hands. And then you want to make a little well in the middle. Pour in 1 cup of buttermilk. Now the key to making really good biscuits is not to overhandle the dough, and that also means don't overstir it. Just barely mixing it in. And you want it to be pretty wet. Not quite like cottage cheese, but a wet dough. So you might have to add a little bit more buttermilk. I'm going to just do a little splash. I don't want it sticky. There. That's pretty well mixed in. Now you want to do a little sprinkle. I use all-purpose flour to sprinkle it on the board. Because too much self-rising, self-rising just has the salt and baking powder in it. You don't need too much of that. So all-purpose to roll it out on the board. Now with this recipe, you're not kneading the dough, because that would just be overhandling it. Okay, getting all that goodness out. And I'll sprinkle a little bit more flour on top, all purpose. And just barely put it together. I'm not kneading it, I'm just turning it to where I'm making sure that flour is covered on it. Now, I don't use a rolling pin, I just do patting it down. I like to use a skillet, a thin skillet like this, and I just lightly brushed it with shortening. and it's probably about 3/4 of an inch thick that are in it. Now all you're doing, usually a batch will make between 10 and 12 biscuits, depending on how thick you roll them. That's a nice thick biscuit. It's closer. I just dip it in the flour each time. Try to get it as close together so you don't have a lot of dough to roll out. I think the trick to it is just not to overhandle the dough. You're going to get 2 rollings out of this. I was born and raised in the South, so these are true Southern biscuits. I taught culinary arts for 36 years, and my students always made this recipe. So on that first rolling, I got 8 biscuits. So there again, you don't want to knead it or work the dough too much. You just barely put it together. Make it into a ball. I'll get some of these crumbs out of the way. A little bit more flour on the board. And just barely pat it down again. About the same thickness. Sometimes with the last biscuit, I just do what I call, most people in the South call a cat head biscuit. Big as a cat's head. I just kind of pat it down. You like that? And we'll just put that in the middle. So we got 11 regular size and 1 cat head. So these are ready to go in the oven. The oven's preheated. And after they come out of the oven, I'll brush them with butter. Okay, these biscuits baked for 12 minutes instead of 10 because I wanted them a little bit browner. When they come out of the oven, just brush with butter, or I'm spooning it on. And there you have it. Southern Buttermilk Biscuits. Let's open one of these up. There you have it. But we can't stop there. We have to add a little bit of local honey. This is Roger and Kay's 100% raw honey. There you have it, a delicious Southern Buttermilk Biscuit. Enjoy!